We're gonna go inside rut only on the left-hand turn and on the right-hand turn. So, sorry guys, but you're gonna feel a little bit uncomfortable for a little while here, but I wanna really dive in and spend as much time as we can getting you guys as comfortable and confident and consistent in ruts. So here's my rule, and this is what I want you guys to do to learn any corner that you ever hit from this point forward, because it works beautifully, is to stand the entire time through your first time through. And until you get comfortable. So you might have to stand 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 times until we really figure out gear selection. Okay, the rut is got some hold here, it's a little loose here, there's some braking bumps here. You just got it all figured out. Then you do what I refer to as reverse engineering it, in that we start sitting at the end just to exit the corner, like maybe a lot of you guys saw me doing on that side of the track, standing the entire corner, sitting for the end. Then sitting a little earlier, 80% mark, 70% mark, 60% mark, maybe 50% mark if we get comfortable, and so on until we overshoot that point and realize I've sat too early. That will help you find where the sweet spot, where to sit in that particular corner is. Otherwise, what are you left to do? Most people sit at the beginning of the turn and put their foot out the beginning of the turn for no rhyme or reason other than they just think that's what they're supposed to do. And then they can never figure out how to actually get through the corner. The reason we start with stand up only is because you can eliminate the controls. You can do it with no rear brake, no front brake, and no clutch, and just leave in the same gear. So we're not doing anything with the controls. And when you stand up, the beauty of standing is that you can use the hips and the knees to lean the bike a lot more underneath you. So you can manipulate the bike more when you're standing up. Another thing we're gonna talk about today, and we did it all day yesterday, is what are we gonna do with our feet in the corners? Feet on the pegs. Both feet on the pegs, inside on that corner, inside on this corner, no exceptions. There are exceptions to being able to put your foot out for a corner, but it's rare. Maybe the circumstance that the corner is so tight and you need to get so much lean angle early that you have to get that foot up and out of the way. But for most of us, we're not getting that much lean angle anyways, and you rarely face a corner that's tight enough to really need that. On a sweeping 180 turn like this, even if this rut got deep all the way up to your foot pegs, it is better to keep the feet on the pegs and stand up through that rut, and easier than it is to try to sit down and put your foot out. A big thing today to get comfortable here is going to be posture, making sure that we stay in this upright position so the hips can work and let the bike lean. If we slouch at all, we're connected completely to the bike and we can't control it. So that's when you guys are probably gonna start to have those issues of, man, I just can't stay in the rut. Right, I get to the 3/4 mark right at that yellow stake and I ride up and out of it every single time. I'll show you a couple demonstrations through. I cannot urge you enough to stand up more than you think you need to and more passes than you think you need to, and to just go slower. No brakes needed, no clutch needed, stand up, go trial speed the first time through for all I care. Just figure out how to stay in that rut. So we got a bunch of Florida kids at this class, and seems like Florida people know how to hit sand, but they don't know how to go in the ruts. So this is how we learn. And when I say slow, you can go that slow or slower if you want the first time through. I would rather that than you guys go too fast and ride up and out of the rut. That was second gear. I was getting too much engine brake and the throttle was a little too torquey. So my correction this time, I'm barely going to go any faster. I'll go a half mile an hour faster, but I'm going to go up to third gear, so to make it a little less shaky, a little bit more smooth for me. I'll still stay standing up, even for me on second pass, stand up only. The big thing to learning ruts is eliminating variables. So now we're going from second to third gear, the second pass through. I'm going a little faster, but barely. Letting that bike lean underneath me, be able to get that lean angle, make those corrections if I need it. That's why we stand the first times through. Next pass, I'm gonna sit right at the end. Still gonna be going super, super slow. The bars are bent in this bike too. So I'm gonna sit right here, right about the 90% mark. Nice and straight up and down. A very slow progression, and I can't recommend it enough. I don't care how fast you are. If you wanna create flow, start your moto slow, tempo speed, and work into learning the track in this way. By the time you get to lap 6 or 7, you're not gonna get arm pumped, you're gonna work yourself into a pace, you're not gonna get tired, and you're gonna create more flow than you've ever been able to create. This is literally me learning the track. So sitting at that same point, right about the 80% mark. I'll sit a little earlier this time. For for the sake of taking too long for the demonstration, even for me, it would take me a while to start sitting at this 50% mark in the turn. Couple of things. So when I do sit, I'm very gentle, right? I don't take forever to get to the seat. I make the transition fairly quick, but I don't just go from standing to plopping my butt down on the seat. And that's because when I put my butt to the seat, 80% of the weight is still in my outside foot. Only 20% of the weight is in my butt. Does that make sense? 20% of the weight is in my butt. That's it. So it's almost like I'm doing a pistol squat and all that weight is just into this outside leg. It took me that many passes to just be able to sit at the 50% mark. How many times did I just have to do it? 5? 4, 5, 6 times maybe at most. That took me a while to back up just to the 50% mark. So if it took me that many tries to get there, it should probably take you at least that, if not longer. No brakes on the entry as far as rear brake goes, because there's braking bumps kind of coming in. I find that the rear brakes just unsettle the bike here. So no rear brakes coming in. And I was using the front brake all the way through to about that hay bale at the 50% mark. That front brake, if you experiment with it in a rut, you can really use it to manipulate the bike. So as soon I was. So I was kind of like trail braking in a sense. Like I was on my front brake from before even where 33 is, way back there, all the way probably to in between the hay bale and that yellow marker. So the 50 to 70% mark, all the way to there.
Very lightly, correct?
Super light, super light. But experiment, you know, squeeze it a little harder, see what happens, right? As soon as I feel my bike starting, because there was a couple moments you guys probably didn't notice where I got halfway through the turn and my bike wanted to go towards Ethan and go towards the camera. But what I did is I just looked further ahead and I squeezed slightly more front brake and it brought it down to the lean angle I needed to get through the corner, right? Yeah.
How would you save it if you put too much front brake?
Well, when you go too much front brake, what's going to happen is this. You're just going to dip a little bit inside of the corner. So you might have to put your foot down for a second, right? You might owe 10 push-ups, but it's not the end of the world. It's good enough to learn. I don't care what skill level you are. That's how I would teach Jet Lawrence how to gain flow in a corner. That's how I would teach a complete beginner how to create flow in a corner. It's such a foolproof way of doing it. It might take a little bit of time. Instead of figuring out in 2 laps, it might take 8 to 10. But let's face it, most people never figure out the rut and then they'll just avoid it. So this is a really good way to learn a section.